I apologize for the late start, but we do have a need for an executive session for personnel matters. Jeff, roll call, please.
Mrs. Berger, Mrs. Boyer, Mr. Crosby, here. Mr. Gonzalez, here. Mr. Mummert, here. Mr. Plessig, here. Mrs. Weaver, Mrs. Jinks, Mr. Zimmerman, here. 6 present, 3 absent.
Maggie Weaver and Mandy Gates are attending concerts for their students tonight. They will be attending later and Cindy's out of town. She'll be coming back to town tonight, but not prior to the point where the meeting, I hope. She doesn't get back in time before our meeting is over. Recognition of visitors, I have a pretty good sized stack of sign-in sheets, and they will be recorded into the minutes of the meeting. The next item on the agenda is recognition of 2022-23 district retirees. Dr. Gerhart, Dr. Hartman, whomever.
So I'm going to ask our principals to come down who are going to honor their retirees to meet me at the front of the stage along with Mr. Momer, so we can do some brief remarks about our retirees and present them with the plaque for their years of service. So if those of you who are able to have retirees, please join me. Retirees will call you down one by one. So.
Congratulate Lynn Bixler on her upcoming retirement. Lynn has served the Southwestern School District for 31 years, most recently as a special education coach, middle school team captain, and previously as a learning support teacher. It's hard to quantify the number of students, staff, and families that Lynn has touched over the years and how many lives she has impacted. Her reach spans generations. In the few years that I have worked in the Southwestern School District, Lynn has heard me say many, many times that she knows the history. She knows the history of our faculty and staff, our leaders, and most importantly, our students and their families. She knows how our programming has evolved, the resources we've used, and why certain procedures are put in place. Despite being the keeper of her history, she is also always looking forward. She wants us in our district to be the very best. She takes deep pride in being a Mustang and is willing to do whatever is needed to support us. I'd like to thank Lynn for her many years of service to our district and wish her the very best as she embarks on many much-deserved trips. I have no doubt that she'll continue her life of service in her retirement, whether it be in the church, the Girl Scouts, or probably even here. But I hope that service is well balanced so that she enjoys the much-deserved time for herself.
All right, next one is high school. Mr. John, if you want to.
Good evening. We have two retirees in the high school this year. We have Dr. Kelly Lynch and Kathy Mizrahi. I'm going to start with Dr. Lynch right over here. Dr. Lynch came to us 33 years ago, and she's taught Spanish and English at Southwestern High School. She's been yearbook advisor, key club advisor, national honors society advisor, gate monitor for sports, shot put and discus throwing judge for track, detention monitor, Spanish language interpreter for special ed, and teacher to many, many great students. According to her, she has taught in this district Eric Seibel, okay, Mandy Yanks, Dan Hartman, Mike Reynolds, and Nate Brokeback, just to name a few. So a lot of names there that we know in this room. So she's been here a long time. She is very grateful and lucky to be working at Southwestern High School with such wonderful students and teachers over the years. I know when I came here 6 years ago, meeting Dr. Lynch, she is very professional, very knowledgeable, and always advocated for students. And she would come down and talk to me in my office if there were concerns or questions and stuff. And I've always appreciated that about Kelly. She's very honest, straight shooter that way. And I've always been very appreciative of the fact that she advocates for her students in the building. So So I want to congratulate Dr. Lynch on her retirement. Our second retiree in high school this year is Kathy Miserandino. I believe she's here with her husband, Chuck, right? Yep. Kathy has been at Southwestern. She came in 2004 as a long-term sub when her son went into preschool. And she said she wanted to get into education. She graduated college, and out of college, she worked in the business world. And she realized while working in the business world that she had a passion for teaching others. And it just kind of translated into that she thought, hey, this would be a great opportunity for me to be a business teacher. So she came to us, like I said, in 2004 as a long-term sub. She started at Hanover High School as a long-term sub, and then eventually moved over here to Southwestern in 2006. So she spent 17 years here. She, in addition to being a business teacher in the high school, she's our cooperative ed coordinator. She does our step ahead students and so on. And she has a huge caseload of kids every year that she really helps them find their career pathway, get them connected with people in the community, and we're very grateful for what she does for our students, getting them prepared for life after high school. Kathy said in her retirement, she definitely wants to spend a lot of time, with her grand. And spend some time with her mom, who just turned 90. Wow, you have good genes in your family. So her mom just turned 90, and she wants to travel with her husband Chuck and go out to California to visit her youngest son in California. And in addition to that, she said she just really wants to spend time with her family. And I totally understand that. So good for you, Kathy. Congratulations.
Good evening, everyone. I have two retirees that I would like to honor tonight. I'm going to start with Larry Coons. Larry Coons, unfortunately, cannot be with us tonight, but I will share a few words about Larry. Many of you know Larry from being a part of our performing arts programs, which we're very proud of at the middle school. He's been our orchestra director for 35 years. He came to us in 2001. Before that, he spent some time in Hanover, in the Hanover School District, and previously the school district in New York. Those of you who know Larry understand his dedication and his passion to our students. I know in talking with him this year, it was a very difficult decision for him to walk away from a program that he spent so much time developing. But he will continue to work with orchestras. He will be working with the Hanover Symphony program as a conductor, and we look forward to still seeing him be a member of our local community, and I'm sure we will still see Larry in our building from time to time. As I talked about at our last meeting, Larry kind of went out in style. At our last concert, we had a conductor who came in, as I shared before, from Los Angeles, and he wrote a special piece of music to honor Brian Dahl Jr., who passed away unfortunately a few years ago. And it was just a fantastic concert, and anybody who was there kind of understands the passion that Larry has for both music and for our kids. So we'd like to recognize Larry for 35 years of service as an orchestra teacher. The second person I would like to honor is Andrea Lamana. Andrea is over here to my left. Raise your hand, Andrea. So Andrea is a guidance counselor at Emory H. Mark and has been with us for 32 years. She started her career in 1991. And actually 32 years, but has really worked 29 of those because she spent 3 of those years at home with her 2 children. She currently has a daughter who lives in the Raleigh-Durham area of North Carolina, and she has a son who will be graduating very soon from St. Mary's College, and is also is a member of the track team at the college. I talked with her recently just about what are some of her accomplishments in her career, and she's very humble. She's most proud of the relationships with her kids and her coworkers, We work very closely together, as you can imagine, an administrative team and a counseling team. And, you know, I always talk about, you know, our building being a small town. And in any small town, from time to time, you have kids who just have disagreements with each other. They have disputes with each other. And Andrea was a natural in dealing with kids one-on-one and also in small groups. She just had a deft touch for meeting with kids, talking through those issues that they might be having, and being solution-oriented and giving them tips moving forward how to handle things as they mature into young adults. When I talked with her, she was very proud of her experience here, considered herself lucky to have a job here. She talked about when she first interviewed here in 1991, she originally finished as the runner-up candidate. And she went home, she had a conversation with her mom and dad about how disappointed that she was she didn't get the job, and they just told her to be positive. Well, lo and behold, the next day, she got a call from the assistant principal, Brad Arnold, and he offered her the job because something fell through with the first candidate and her certification. She talked to me also about really enjoying working with the tough kids. If you know Andrea, she every year she had a lunch bunch. You would walk by the lunchroom, and with middle school kids, there's always middle school kids who have difficulty from time to time with social relationship. And you would look in the lunchroom, and there would be Andrea sitting with a group of young ladies and gentlemen, and just working with them on social skills and getting them to interact and develop friendships, and she was just very good with that. The other thing that Andrea did a great job of, and, you know, if we had trouble getting in touch with a parent, she had a magical touch to somehow get in touch with parents, even if we would contact several times, and in some cases she would even text them. You know, we'd be in contact with them, and we'd be able to address whatever kind of concern or issue that we're able to address. So I will certainly miss my time working with Andrea. Our office will certainly be different without her, and we certainly wish her the best. Thank you.
Good evening. I feel like I'm bending down again. I'm good. All right. I get the honor of talking about two individuals this evening. First off, we have Mrs. Sally Dorica. Mrs. Dorica could not be here this evening, but so I want to talk about it. Sally started her career at Bearsville in 1988 as a first grade teacher. Before that, she had 4 years teaching at the LIU, but she came over to us. And then in 1990, she went to West Manheim, where she taught transition, first grade, and third grade. Then, in 2004, she came back to Bearsville as a third grade teacher, and she's been with us at Bearsville for the last 19 years. So Sally has a grand total of 38 and a half years in education, and 34 and a half of them were here at Southwestern. Sally graduated from Clarion University in 1984, and she got her master's from Western Maryland, now McDaniel, back in 1989. I asked some staff members to share some information about, Sally and what she means to the field of education. And this is what they said. They said she was very intentional with her teaching, still is. She's dedicated. She's a reader. One thing about kids in Sally's classroom, they always talk about stories that she read to them. Sally is involved with kids outside of school. I know this firsthand because my son had Sally. He's 22 now, and I remember Sally showing up for one of his youth league basketball games. And it just goes to show her dedication to the profession. And then finally, last comment I got is kids. She got kids to reach their full potential. So just like to wish Sally happy retirement, and we wish her all the best. So just honor Sally. And then I get to talk about Mrs. Deborah Sowers. Deb, come on down. So, some interesting things about Deb. Oh, no. It's good. So, Deb entered Mrs. Baldwin, Yvonne Baldwin's class in second grade at Brookside Elementary in 1971. And she has been with Southwestern School District ever since, except for 4 years where she was at Susquehanna University. So that is a lot of years at Southwestern. As I said, she went to Susquehanna University. She majored in psychology and somehow got elementary education in that. She has a master's in learning technology from Harrisburg University. She taught 22 and a half years at Park Hills in third grade. The last 13 years has been in Gifted, where she serviced the 4 buildings and now, most recently, Erin Markle Middle School. In addition, Deb was a youth director at a church for 10 years. Just a little bit of personal information about Deb. Her husband, Bill, 36 years. Very understanding gentleman, right? Based on the story she told me the other day. That was a little late to work, but it was a minor mishap. Didn't realize there was a truck on the driveway when she was backing up. But you know what? We all do those things. And I said to you, what? Nobody was injured, right? So remember that. You remember that when things go wrong, you know? Nobody's injured. So Bill, she's been married for 36 years. She has 2 daughters, Katie and Amy. And then hobbies for Deb. Just a little bit of personal information here. She enjoys digital scrapbooking. She enjoys reading. Historical fiction is her favorite genre. She enjoys singing and playing the guitar. And then she enjoys family game night. As far as future plans for Deb, our grandparent is very soon. Anytime now. And this is first grandchild. And that's through Amy. Yep. She wants to volunteer at church. She wants to travel. She's been to 14 Major League ballparks. So you want to do them all?
Yeah. National League first.
National League first, yes. And in addition, she wants to go to Denmark and to Germany in her travels. So we wish you all the best, Deb. And, you know, when you think about all those years that you've been here, we've heard that, you know, Dr. Holmes said how Lynn touched so many different kids. Think about all the kids that you've touched going through Southwestern School District. And same thing with Mrs. DeRico. So we congratulate you. We wish you all the best.
So within our operations and maintenance department, we have a number of retirees. I'd like to start with Connie Croft. I'll call her down. Connie served at the high school in recent years. 29 years of service to the Southwestern School District. As Connie comes up here, when she stands beside me, you'll see she's not of large stature, but I want to point out that as I look about my life, if I look around at the people that I encounter, this lady is one of the most powerful people I know. This lady has a tenacity. She gets up, she gets it done, regardless of how she feels that day. She carries burdens that most others can't imagine, and she still gets it done. She shows up, she's reliable. She's been a cornerstone for our department and has always been there whenever we needed her. It's remarkable to me as you look around. You can overlook people a lot of times, but when you stand back and you look, and you think about what they've done, it leaves me in awe of this. As I talk to her members, contradictory, opposite, ironic to what I just stated, her heart of a warrior, they have fond memories of compassion, a sweetheart, somebody always remembers a birthday, somebody always willing to hand out a nice note, gesture, thinks about those around her. So at the end of the day, we're all very lucky to have Connie Croft in the school district. Thank you. So I'd like to mention a few other people that are not here this evening. Steve Hartloff announced his retirement from the school district. Steve Hartloff has been in the maintenance department for 19 years. I assure you he will not be an easy set of shoes to fill. As like so many of the people in our department, they like to serve in the background. They're not anxious to be front and center. And it doesn't necessarily surprise me when he doesn't show up for anything like this. But I attest to you all, we will miss him every day once he retires. We still have him for a couple months. We're going to make the most of him. But Steve's a big set of shoes to fill in the school district. The other retiree we need to take a moment and remember, we need to point out, Mike Jacobs retired in December, and unfortunately in January passed. So we need to take a moment, not forget Mike. He served 26 years, almost 26 years for the school district of Park Hills. Once again, another dependable, another worker working in the background, not about a bunch of accolades standing in front of everybody, but they showed up every day and got it done. So I'd just like to take a moment and remember Mike. Thank you. The final retiree I want to point to this evening is Mike Stevens. Mike, you come on down. Now, Mike Stevens is one of these guys that's almost bigger than life in the Southwestern School District. Everybody knows Mike. Everybody knows Mike's big smile. He spent 33 years here, most notably leading the grounds department. Mike's been a positive influence. I think he's touched many people's lives in this school district. Many more than what most of us would suspect as somebody in a maintenance and support role. I'm just going to put a real quick one in there, and I'm going to turn it over to Barry Lockman, his direct supervisor, because he's also touched Barry, and Barry needs to speak about Mike. So one of my favorite things that I like to think about and smile with Mike is he has that wonderful ability to make hard work fun. He holds students, his crew accountable, and one of the biggest things that I appreciate is that I look and see how he's touched the students that have had their first jobs with our grounds department under Mike Stevens. He taught them all the important attributes of showing up on time, putting an honest day's work in, taking a tough job, and doing it with a smile. And if you I can't think of a better way to start a young person's career out in the work world than starting with a person like Mike Stevens. This will let Barry take it from there.
About 33 years, right? Plus. Right? I don't think I was born when we started working for you. But seriously, in 33 years, I don't think there's anybody that's worked in the district for any amount of time that doesn't know, like most said, just a huge impact. Most of us just through your demeanor, how you handle yourself, and that was just huge. So I jokingly, actually, we even named a road after Mike Stevens Boulevard here on main campus. Mike knows it well. He's plowed it many times, many winters, right? I personally have worked with Mike for 22 years. Probably wasn't until even the last 6 years that I worked with him when he became supervisor that I really realized Mike's work ethics and his dedication to his job. I could let Mike fly with things, and I knew that work would be done well, and I knew it would be done not just on time, but probably early. Right? That's just Mike's nature. One of his things he repeated to me all the time, because he took very much pride in his work, was when somebody comes into the district, the grounds are the first thing that they're going to see, and that was the goal that he tried to instill into his students and his staff. And I can say that his staff respected him very highly. The students that Nate talked about, many of them came back later on, years later, just to follow up with Mike and to sit and chat and just catch up. And that means a lot. It speaks a lot into what you've done in their lives. So appreciate that, Mike.
I appreciate what you've done for the district through the years, how you worked with me through the years, and I just want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for your dedication, your loyalty to the district that just goes beyond what most people can imagine, most people didn't know, because your job was a behind-the-scenes job, a support job. If that didn't matter to you, you got it done, and done well. Thank you for your loyalty and dedication to Southwest School District.
It is indeed my privilege to congratulate two retirees from the business office this year. It doesn't happen very often, but we have two this year. The first one I congratulate is Kim Wentz. Kim, would you come back, please? Kim has served the district for 22.22 years. A Southwestern grad. She came to Southwestern after a successful 20-year career in the U.S. Army. When hired, she had no accounting background, so she tells me, but she was hired anyway. She was told by the business administrator at the time that they could teach her the accounting aspect, but it was her organizational skills that were essential and that they were looking for. When I think of Kim, two words come to mind: consistent and organized. She is perhaps one of the most organized individuals I know, and consistent. I've worked with her for 19 of her 22 plus years, and she has done her job at a very high level for all of that time. Perhaps one of her biggest accomplishments, at least in my mind, is that she has been using the district's credit card to pay our bills and has been able to generate $59,833.38 in cash back savings for the district. So I appreciate that very much. As for retirement, she's looking forward to spending more time with her grandkids and gardening and working in her yard and working on remodeling her house. Kim, thanks for your outstanding service to our district. Best wishes for a great retirement. The other individual I want to talk about briefly is Sherry Meckley. Sherry Meckley is retiring after 40.26 years of service for the district. Another Southwest grad, she came to work at the district soon after graduation. She began in the Buildings and Grounds Department and soon after migrated over to the business office, where she spent the majority of her career. She has held or done virtually every job in the business office and has so much experience that she needs essentially no supervision. I very much appreciate her outstanding service to the district and wish her well in retirement, where she'll be able to spend more time with family and grandkids. Both Kim and Sherry will be very hard to replace, and I wish them all the best.
So just as a point of reference, what you saw tonight before you represents 419.42 years of experience and institutional knowledge walking out the door. We thank them for their service. They are exceptional Mustangs. We will miss them. But I do have one question. What are you going to do on the first snow day? Big band. All right, that's what I thought. Congratulations to everyone. Thanks.
Okay, hearing the first address before. Next on our agenda is first to address the board. We have the GSA project on the phone, the Mayor Evans. I'm not even going to attempt that. Solar education and river power. One person or? Oh, I'm sorry. skipped over one thing, just have a seat there. Just have a seat there. I'm sorry, I skipped over something. Additions, deletions, modifications to the agenda. Yeah.
I do have one item. So we recently discussed, I should say, the board was notified of a request to speak by a person who is not a resident or taxpayer in the district. There was some back and forth discussion, and the board was informed that by the president that he would be allowing that person to speak tonight. I have a concern as that is a disregard of policy 903, which clearly states we have to have public speakers being either taxpayers or residents of the district. The discussion from this gentleman was eloquently stated, and I'm not against him speaking. However, I believe we should be following our own policies. I do not believe the president has the authority to disregard established policy on his own. If we want to proceed in this fashion, then I believe we should be making a motion to disregard or suspend our policy 903, which requires participants of public speaking to be residents or taxpayers, or, as we've done in the case of Mr. Asper, we've had delineated him as a representative of an organization, which was also in the policy. So I would like to make a motion that we add that to the agenda, that if we're going to allow, if we're going to go to a realm of disregarding our policy, we should at least suspend the policy, because in my understanding of disregarding policy back in the COVID times, I researched this very clearly, that is the easiest way for a board to litigation is to disregard our own policy. So I would seek that we do not go to that place at this time.
So your motion at the moment is to modify the agenda, or to suspend policy 903. I just want to make sure your motion is clear. You're suspending policy 903 to allow the person being requested to speak tonight to speak.
Right, if the board so seeks to do so.
Correct.
Right, just one time, because that's my concern. We continue to do that at home. We should be making a motion.
So, and for context, in policy 003, which is titled functions, it does allow the board to suspend its own policies as long as it's not violating another federal or state law, which this would not be, because sunshine law only requires that public comment come from members, residents or taxpayers, but does not prohibit the board from allowing anyone else to make such comments. So, for purpose being is for 003, you can suspend it for 1 meeting if you would like to do so. A particular policy, which here would be 903, public participation at board meetings.
And lastly, for consideration, looking at this, there's policy 011, which states allows responsible governments by complying with their own board policy. So this is our own policy, and it's stated several places we should follow our own policy.
Okay, okay, Matt has made a motion. We've had some clarification from the solicitor. Is there a second to the motion? We need a second before discussion.
Second.
Thank you, Tom. Now you, Mr.
So you were asking to suspend it. I didn't hear you say this.
You have your microphone on.
Can we put the words in this time
Absolutely.
into your motion? I think this policy needs to be revisited. But in order to allow someone to speak this evening, we would have to suspend it this evening. Correct? Am I understanding that correctly? But I'd like to make a motion to revisit that policy if we're going to be talking about that policy.
One motion at a time.
Okay, so let's do this.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Let's take a roll call vote. Please, Jeff.
So the motion.
So this motion is specific to the evening or the evening and a specific speaker?
I interpret it to be the evening, allowing the person this evening to speak.
I can clarify my motion. It's, so each time you come across the person wishing to speak, you should evaluate whether they're a taxpayer resident. So I would say we're suspending for this particular person at this particular time to allow them to speak as in discussion.
Okay. Sounds okay with the modification to the motion. Okay. Now, Jeff, roll call, please.
Mrs. Berger.
Yes.
Mr. Klosky. Yes. Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Mr. Plessy.
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver.
Yes.
Mrs. James.
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes.
Mr. Mummert.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
Okay, thank you. Now, hearing the persons who wish to address the board, I'm not sure which one of you want to go first. Just step up to the mic and state your name. Or go together.
Sorry. All right. Hi, I'm Emerald. I'm the current president of the GSA. This is River Howard. He's representing members of the GSA. Unfortunately tonight, James or Jimmy and Solar aren't able to be here tonight, though they very much wanted to be here.
Hi, my name is River Howard. I'm a senior at Southwestern High School. I've been going to Southwestern High School all 4 years. I'm a student representative and member of GSA. Conversation with the GSA officers in the school admin, which I was invited to by my AP Bio teacher, Mr. Reddle, and I apologize, that AP exam was today, so I'm a little tired. We had talked about specifically for the policy in regards to the bathroom, switching the language of gender identity facilities to inclusive bathrooms. We had talked about as a group that the point of these bathrooms is to be for everyone, not just trans students or students who identify as not what their biological sex is. The point of these bathrooms is about all students being comfortable to go to the bathroom and get back to class, which should be the point of the bathroom. You raise your hand, you say, hey, I gotta go to the bathroom, you go, you do business, get back. It shouldn't be about gender, it shouldn't be about identity, it's inclusive. You can go to the bathroom, you can get back to class. It shouldn't be more than that. That's all I have, thank you.
So discussing with the board and with my advisors and such, we discussed a few questions we had about the policy, some things we'd like clarification on. So when it comes to the revisions and questions I'd like to ask, one thing that's not specified in the policy currently is whether or not you'll be adding those extra privacy measures that we discussed, such as like bathroom stalls going all the way to the floor, or privacy partitions, or changing stalls in locker rooms, which if that's not already a part of the policy, should be, because even if you're in a group bathroom or in a group locker room, people still want privacy, regardless of gender or anything of that. Another thing I'd like to address is how one might be able to use a single restroom or changing facility, how you would go about asking for one, and whether or not you might need to go to an administrator or possibly a guidance counselor. And when it comes to students using inclusive facilities, how long must they identify as a gender, and how is that recognized? I would like to know whether or not students need parental consent or whether or not it's just a student and guidance decision. Because when it comes to home life, the school has no idea whether or not it's safe or supportive, not at their own fault. But I'm worried about the possible outing if there is parental consent involved in some of this process. And gender identity is a very personal journey in which a person must take at their own pace. And I know the school offers many resources to help people along with coming out to families. And I think that's wonderful. And I'd like that we continue that at the students' pace, not the schools. I would know because I've had to go through a lot of that journey myself. And I have faith and trust in the school that it will not take the path of outing people or to disturb students. Lastly, I'd like to know about how the school board and the school itself might handle potential bullying, harassment, and or microaggressions that might occur with this policy coming into place if it does. Thank you. This is all I have in terms of the suggested policy. And if any of you have questions for the GSA or for me or River about our experiences or anything else, we'd be glad to have that conversation. Because I know for people who don't necessarily have the experiences we do as people in the LGBTQ community, it can be confusing. And if you have anything that you'd like to have a conversation about that with us, we'd be welcome to. Thank you so much for your time.
And our solicitor has made notes as well as some of our other board members and administrators, and we'll take those into consideration. Do have any persons that had signed in to address agenda items? Martha Daniel.
Tonight I'd like to talk about the issue of boys and girls using the bathroom of the opposite sex. Boys and girls should be using the bathroom of the sex that they were assigned at birth. Boys should be using the boys' bathroom and locker room, and girls should be using the girls' bathroom and locker room. There are multiple reasons for this. Boys and girls should be able to have the privacy and safety of being with their own sex in bathrooms and locker rooms. They have the right to privacy, which allowing the opposite sex in the bathroom or locker room does not provide. In the proposal, there is a privacy expectation statement that says, quote, all students have an expectation of privacy in district facilities, regardless of whether they use sex-assigned at birth facilities or gender identity facilities. Any action taken by a student in a district facility that violates the privacy of another student in that facility is strictly prohibited. Students who violate the privacy of another student will be disciplined, end quote. Please tell me how allowing a boy and girl's bathroom or locker room, or a girl in a boy's bathroom or locker room, doesn't reek of violating the privacy of another student. There is also the possibility of rape, which is something that has been reported multiple times across this country. Just last year, a boy claiming to be a girl raped a girl in a school in Virginia. The school and the school board tried to hide that this happened, and the father of the girl that was raped was arrested when he confronted the school board to fight for the rights of his daughter at the meeting. The boy was then transferred to another school and proceeded to rape another girl. I do not want to see this happen to any student in the school district, and I don't think that any other parent would wish this on any child, whether it be their own or another's child. The residents in the school district pay way too much in school taxes. With today's economy being what it is, there are many people who have a hard time paying for their mortgages, their taxes, as well as putting food on the table to feed their children. If a decision is made to go with gender-neutral bathrooms, this will more than likely result in massive construction costs. To me, this is a waste of taxpayer dollars, as there aren't that many kids in the school district who think they are the opposite sex to justify this kind of expense. Why should we, the taxpayers, incur huge construction costs for such a small number of people who may think they are the opposite sex? We shouldn't pay. The school board has a fiduciary responsibility to spend taxpayer money responsibly. Too many of our tax dollars are wasted by the federal, state, and local governments, and there's not a lot we can do about it. Our tax dollars should not be wasted by the school board. At least the residents of the school district can voice our concerns and pray that you listen to us. At the last school board meeting, keeping parents in the dark about what is going on with their child at school, whether it be that their child may think that they're opposite sex, or about medical care that may be needed, was discussed. Parents have every right to know what is going on with their child while at school. They need to know so that they can get their child the proper medical care, whether it be medical health care or mental health care. Parents are responsible for the lives of their children, and if they don't know what's going on at school, they can't make sure that their children are getting the mental or medical care that they need. The school's responsibility is to teach children reading, writing, math, science, and history, nothing else. The children in the school district should be protected against the evil in our world at all costs. Kids need to be allowed to be kids. They are young for such a short time. The parents in the school district need to fight this with everything that we've got to stop this insanity. Our children's lives are at stake. I thank you for your time.
And Mindy Levin.
Good evening. I am Mindy Blevins, current school board candidate, and I promise to always do my best to approach every topic and discussion with civility and professionalism. I believe in being respectful and giving grace and humility in all my communication as much as possible. I do commend you on the efforts you are making with proposed policy 711, and I hope in time we will get to a solution that will protect all our students and provide a level of comfort that all will be satisfied with. Moving forward, I would like to ask that we open dialogue around the drug usage, violence, and bullying within this district. With roughly 20 students being expelled this year and the many calls to Penn Township Police Department for medical emergencies and assistance, and hearing the many students who have pointed out in these meetings that bullying is a problem, I believe we should utilize this as a teaching moment and give it the attention it needs. I would like to see the board address these issues and hear suggestions on how it can be improved. These are supposed to be zero tolerance policies, and we regularly hear no bullying and no drugs being taught to our students, yet it continues to be a problem. That tells me that we either need to be doing more or we have to change our approach. Also, I regularly hear from elementary students, one being my own, that they are afraid to transition into middle school because of all the fights they hear about. I would suggest it's probable these topics are influencing our high truancy numbers as well. Respectfully, I'd like to ask the board to consider adding these topics to the upcoming agendas. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to address an agenda item for action? Okay, then we'll move on. Item 8 on our agenda is personnel committees and charter.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that we approve items 8A, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's it. 1, 2, and 3. And this includes leaves, professional personnel, and student workers as well.
I'll second. We have a motion from Mr. Berger and a second by Mr. Tucker. We're agenda item 8A, 1, 2, 3. Comments, questions? Roll call, please, Jeff.
Mr. Crosby? Yes. Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. Plessy?
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver?
Yes.
Mrs. Yates?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Berger? Mr. Mummers?
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
Next on our agenda is proposed May 24th agenda items.
Just as you see in front of you, we have recommendations for Dr. Sherman as an annual appointment for treasurer, and we have a request for a Southwestern 7th grade to use our practice fields this summer. Other than that, I'm sure you'll have personnel items if we are still in hiring for the upcoming school year, and bills to be paid, some buildings and grounds items as well.
Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda is planning and discussion is a middle school soccer proposal.
We've done an extensive survey to our community, and we've identified a need and a desire for our middle school to undertake some soccer teams, male and female soccer teams. And what we'd like the board is for your permission to consider implementing these programs in the coming school year. It would start as a club, and then it would move to a competition sport that would move. During the club, they would still compete against other local school districts, but eventually it would move into a sport that would be competitive, just like it would be if it were a recognized varsity or additional middle school sport. So what we're asking for is if the board would give us permission to cost it out and bring it to you for your approval more than likely at a June meeting, so that we can advertise and begin practices and identify coaches for the club for the coming summer school year.
Okay, so you're looking for approval to go ahead with the exploration of the middle school soccer program. Any comments from the board? Do we feel okay to have them go ahead and investigate any of this and see what it's going to entail?
Well, this would give us, we have to bring in pricing as we for approval.
Okay, if I hear comments, I see it actually, to go ahead with the next step of the proposal this class.
I'll talk to Mr. Ortman tomorrow, either be at our next meeting or the first meeting in June, which will give him ample time to get ready for the upcoming school year. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next item is the discussion and review of our draft policy 711, use of facilities by students.
So for the board and for the public who received the policy on an attachment for tonight's agenda, I apologize, but I inadvertently sent generally the original version that did not have some of the additions that reflected the discussion from last board meeting. I will read to you what I included. I did draft it, I just sent the wrong one to Dr. Burkhart and I sent it. So many of the details relative to whether it should be certain details should be in a policy or in an administrative regulation. Many of the requested details about how things play out on a day-to-day basis are more appropriate for administrative regulations, which is where Dr. Burkhart and I have been conversing pretty regularly. Many of the concerns raised today, as well as the concerns that were raised last meeting, I believe are more appropriate for the administrative regulations. So I put into the policy the next round of draft for the policy is the board authorizes the superintendent or his or her designee to develop and promulgate regulations designed to implement this policy to ensure the privacy and safety of all students in the district. And then I know there were questions about, or a request about whether, because there are accommodations and leniencies provided to staff members, in terms of their entrance in or out of a certain facility, I did include that there would be disciplinary measures should a staff member violate the policy, and I incorporated that and connected it back to the disciplinary policy for employees, which is policy 317. So I think those are most of the edits that I made to the policy, just adding the citation to loop it in, and then much of the content of the concerns today and last board meeting, I believe are better addressed through administrative regulations. So I wanted to make that statement.
Okay. Is this one coming through? No, okay. Board members who wish to address what has just been relayed to us through the solicitor?
This is actually not related to what was shared.
Okay.
But since the policy was introduced in the last meeting, there have been multiple comments from the public about the money being spent to fulfill the policy. I think it was clearly explained that the policy is based on existing bathrooms. It is not talking about construction of new bathrooms for any building, correct?
So the high school renovation does make accommodations for private use bathrooms. That was part of the design that's been about a year in the making. So that was something that most public schools are working toward when they're renovating. Some of them, I won't say any cost is not mine, but some of the costs that we may seek would be more likely in this building, where I know Mr. Osborne and I have had conversations about either seeing if we have existing stalls that we no longer use in storage and or purchasing them so that we could create private changing areas in the locker rooms. So there may be some costs associated with that. There is no plan to do any further renovation to this building in order to create private use bathrooms. But as always, and I know this was discussed at the Buildings and Grounds meeting on Monday night, the potential does exist that if we have faculty restrooms that could be used for private use restrooms, we could look into that as well. But at this time, the only construction changes that would happen relative to a private use bathroom would be during the renovation of the high school. This building would more than likely see private stalls, and if you can picture a typical bathroom stall minus a toilet, which could be used for changing. And that would be in all, as pointed out earlier, that would be in all locker rooms, because I think all of our children, all of our students would appreciate the opportunity to change in private. So that would be the cost that I think we would enjoy.
Other comment?
Yes, so in looking at this continued discussion, I'd first like to start with the cost. I did meet with Dr. Burkhart, and we covered a lot of that. And the cost is minimal under this policy, and the cost is baked into the renovation. I do want to highlight that all the shower facilities going into the high school will be a changing area you stepped into, and then from there you step into the shower, much like you would see at a campground. I think that's important to highlight as well. I asked last time we discussed this about two specific points, and that is the indecent exposure point. Dr. Dalton pointed out that there was one issue he was able to locate. We discussed the legality of that, and in my opinion, it affirms that indecent exposure is one of the violations that a student is exposed to if they expose themselves to another student. So that is something that is held as a consideration when a child is in a situation that exposes themselves to another child, and it depends upon several harms. Now, under the current policy, we are establishing that because we have different delineated bathrooms, there is a clearer understanding that you go into biological use only and you enter into some kind of exposure situation, that would be a knowing act that would knowingly cause offensive harm or alarm, which would trigger indecent exposure prosecution. So there's that piece to consider. That will be in play regardless of this policy or not this policy. That is a state law. That is something that continues to be in play, in my opinion. I also want to highlight in the last discussion we referenced parental consent and involvement. That's a very important piece to me. In hearing the additions tonight, I'm not comfortable with just delegating that to the superintendent. I feel we should hard word that into our policy, the parental advocacy and involvement. In meeting with Dr. Burkhart earlier in the week, there was a discussion of how under this policy it would be enforced or related to parents and having their involvement. My understanding from that, Dr. Burkhart waited if I did it wrong, but my understanding would be a notice would go home with the parent and child, for the parent and child to consider at the beginning of the year so they fully understand this bathroom policy and the usage thereof. So that way it would prompt a discussion between parent and child as to which bathroom they shouldn't be using to be enforced from home rather than by the school. And I think that's an appropriate way to start. However, I still hold that this is by no means a comprehensive policy, and we should be delineating the bathrooms for diverse sex. Along those lines, we received public comment from a former board member yesterday, Paige Ringer, who suggested that we review and consider the Virginia Department of Education's 2022 model policy. That policy, in my opinion, having read it, and I realized we got it yesterday, so I don't expect all board members to have read it at this point, but I do want to comment on it. I think it's very comprehensive, and most importantly, it is very deterring parent-oriented, it's parent-centric. You must notify under that suggested policy, and like I said, I think we should revisit after the board's had an ample chance to go through that policy, but it provides a sample policy and it clearly delineates when you get into any number of these. It's comprehensive. It covers use of pronouns, it covers identification as whether you want to identify as transgender or not. It covers parental notification, parental involvement. I would encourage everyone that's interested and on this issue you can simply Google search Virginia Department of Education 2022 model policy, and it will come up. I would also ask that we provide that on the next agenda, so any members that are interested in finding out more would be going on that as well. I think we should seriously consider most of it. It goes back to. It starts by very clearly highlighting where I come from. We've had this discussion briefly when we talked about parental permission for club involvement. The Supreme Court, Sandra O'Connor, in a Supreme Court case, Fox versus Granville, clearly delineated the rights of parents to decide for their children is the oldest, most fundamental right that parents have. And I think we should be developing from that point. Parental involvement and consideration is number one, in my opinion. So any policy we develop, in my opinion, has to include parental involvement in it, hard-coded in the wording, and not up for interpretation. So that's where I'm coming from, and like I said, I would ask that the board review what we got yesterday. I think it's an excellent, comprehensive starting point, and it covers stuff that we haven't discussed yet, such as transgender pronoun usage, how exactly one would identify as which sex if they chose to try and identify as the opposite to their biology. It's comprehensive, so I would ask that we look at that and revisit.
Okay, so yes, I do know that email came in. And no, I have not had time to review, and I'm sure there are probably others who may or may not have had that opportunity. So, over the next couple of weeks, you'll have an opportunity to review that Virginia policy, and listeners can also include it as a copy of it, and we'll review it and see what we can do with it.
And to speak to several of the comments made tonight from the public, both bullying and Loudoun County, this policy comes from ground zero, as Mr. Ringer states, on transgender presence in bathrooms with the Loudoun County case. This policy very clearly delineates there should be no bullying or discrimination towards transgender or any LGBTQ community, and that is in the policy as well, that there should be no bullying. It's comprehensive. I would just urge that we all look at it and review it.
Okay. Anything else? Any other board members? Yes, ma'am.
Earlier this week, I got the opportunity to visit East Lancaster County High School. It's East Lancaster County is situated in northern Lancaster County. They addressed the same type of things that we are facing here in our district 3 years ago when they rebuilt their high school to the same tune and price as what we're building today. In an attempt to be in the forefront of safety for all of their students, they redesigned all of their locker rooms, both male and female. They have 3 locker rooms now. Their locker rooms are completely and utterly neutral, and let me explain what I mean. When you walk into their locker rooms, which I got to do while students were moving inside and out of them, there are half-height lockers, much like at our libraries where you see the half-height shelves with the books. And surrounding the locker room on all walls were individual floor-to-ceiling stalls with lockable doors. Similar to if you were going to get changed in a fitting room at, say, Old Navy or something like that, where it's a complete blackout. You cannot see who's inside of it. The door's locked, both the doors are lights. They have turned red when the door is locked, similar to an airplane bathroom. Some of the doors were labeled changing rooms, some of the doors were labeled bathrooms, some of the doors were labeled showers. They are a smaller district than we are. They have, in totality, in their shared buildings, their middle school and high school are attached. They have 1,000 students, so definitely smaller than we are. They have 7 to 7 of these individual changing rooms / locker rooms / shower rooms. And the middle area is no different than walking into the front atrium of your school. And their superintendent explains that you would never change in the front atrium of a school, and that's their expectation in their locker rooms. There is enough space for everyone to have a private area to change, whether they be a male who's uncomfortable in dressing in front of males, a female uncomfortable in dressing in front of females, people that identify as transgender, people that have been assaulted, people that suffer from eating disorders. I actually got the opportunity to stop 3 of the students while I was there and ask them how they felt about the redesign. And I was watching everyone just move in and out as if it was the flow of a normal day. They said they never see anyone changing. There's not even benches in the locker room. There are big lockers, but there are no benches. So it is single, individualized, safe spaces for kids. And it's very well done. And I do understand and I totally hear the taxpayers' concerns. I myself am a taxpayer. I have kids in the district. But we are about to embark in rebuilding high school. We're starting in a locker rooms and the list of things to be done. And I think this is something before we break ground that we need to talk about, because this is a logical fix. And when I say fix, I'm not saying that there's a problem. What I'm saying is that we, in our situation right now, are being very reactive. And I understand that. But moving forward with laws that we know are going to be passed in June or July or whenever they come up, we're going to be backpedaling again. And I don't want these kids to be coming from a position behind. I think that we have the prime opportunity, at least in our high school, to consider something like this. It does provide a safe space for every child. And the other thing is it cuts down on who has to oversee the children. So if you think about our gym situations, if we have female gym teachers, they cannot enter a male locker room to make sure that the males are not pooping off or whatever they might be doing, causing trouble, and vice versa. When you have a half-light locker room that can be easily seen at all times, and each child is an individual changing area, anyone can oversee them because no one is in a state of undress at any time in public. So it would allow the ability of multiple different adults to be able to oversee without overstepping the policy that states that they wouldn't be able to if we put that policy through. So it was very kind of them to open their building to me to get the opportunity to look around. They did a great job protecting all of their students. And it was a 9-0 vote on their board to create this space. After a much more fragmented vote prior, before they realized the safety aspect that this would provide to all students in the district. I know that we are much larger, so we would have to look at this in a greater scale, and I'm certainly not trying to make more work for people who worked so hard to design this beautiful high school building. But I think we would be hurting ourselves to not entertain something like this before we start tearing the building apart. I think we would be moving forward in a world that will help us protect our children before we are backpedaling to protect our children. So,
So similar to Mr. Weaver's efforts, I have arranged for a meeting with the president and CEO of the YMCA of the Roses, which is most commonly known as Big Door YMCAs. And I reached out to him primarily because they are currently fundraising with the hopes of breaking ground and beginning renovations on their Spring Grove location in the next few months. So in doing so, I wanted to find out what they took into account, what's working for them, and find out before we do proceed with the high school renovation, what we can really do to get on board with that. This is an organization, while it is outside of the education sector, we know they cater to many families within our community, and their mission is inclusive and accessible by all. So I just thought it would be an interesting to see what they're taking on this current situation. So hopefully I will have something to report back at our next meeting.
We'll have to take a look at that, but I know Nate's discussing his head, trying to figure out where we're going to go from here. We're going to have a very in-depth conversation with our architect to see where and how something like this can be put in place, because we just put out the request for bids this week for that renovation. So we need to get our architect on top of it and see where things come as far as how could this be put into the current plan. How do we do it? What will we need? Do we need change orders? Do we need alternate bids? And that we don't know yet at this point. We'll have to get the architect involved. And as soon as you have any additional information, Mandy, maybe anyone else, funnel them back into either myself or Nate, so we can get the proper people involved that we need to see where we can go with this.
So I had a follow-up question for me, just so I understand what was occurring at the school visit. So the area where they had half-white lockers, they weren't changing at those lockers, they were just collecting their clothes and then going to a changing area?
They had so the kids I saw, the kids I witnessed were carrying a variety of bags. You know, some had their drawstring bags that mine was from carrying gym, some had their big sports bags, some had baseball bags. And the lockers are single use, but they were to like chest height, so you can still see the whole thing. And no one was undressing in that area. There really wasn't, I don't want to say there wasn't space, it was a large area, but that's where the lockers were. So it was 3 back-to-back lines of lockers. And I didn't, respectfully, they did offer that they can send me pictures, but due to the fact that there were children moving in and out, I personally not take pictures of other people's children. But they did offer that they could send that when the building was closed if we wanted to see it. And then yeah, so there were just children coming in and out like they would be attending their lockers in the hallway. And then kids were just kind of tucking into these little rooms, closing the door, turn the handle, light goes on. And they have had to troubleshoot. You know, they had people kicking the door locks when they first put them in and testing the system. But they're now at year 3. This was done in 2019. And they said they have a no tolerance policy. If you damage it, you know, this is an electrical system, you're paying for it, and it's cut down on it significantly. And they found it to be very successful. There were gym classes going on. I would have loved to speak to a gym teacher, but I was on their time. So to be respectful, I worked with their superintendent. But it was 3 large areas. I would envision what they probably did was they took their girls' locker room, their boys' locker room, and because they needed extra, they utilized what looked like it was probably originally a hallway between the 2 gyms. And then that was just a long hallway with nothing but doors and 1 row of lockers. And that's how they were able to pull off the 7 that they would need, which he said actually was a greater amount than they would need for a gym class. But they took into account after sports because then multiple teams could be prepping to change and get off. So, the fields aren't busted what they needed to do. But he said that while at first there was pushback from the board as to doing this, when the realization occurred of exactly how this would protect all students, it was a lot easier for the board to come to the agreement that this wasn't, and again, I'm going to use the word issue, but please understand I'm just quoting what I've heard. This wasn't an issue of whether it was a transgender child or a biological child. This was an issue of child safety. Just like we address other issues of children's safety. And I was going to ask, but the gentleman that toured with, he actually had hard numbers of the number of fights that have occurred in their locker rooms prior to this that were actually same-sex on same-sex. So a boy fighting a boy in the locker room. When a teacher couldn't be present because the gym teacher was in there. And the drop that they were seeing in regards to that. And that's also something that I feel is very important in education. Okay.
It does, other than the lighting. I'm not sure which one of the light is. If we have a lock, just that then people know.
So you don't have, if you see that it's locked and it's red, you're not jiggling the handle. Or I guess you shouldn't be jiggling.
Right.
Just like if you walk under an airplane and go into the airplane bathroom, if it's green, you're going to push the handle down. If it's red, you're hopefully going to walk away or wait patiently.
I do feel like in the past years, since May last year, I heard Nate and Dr. Burkhardt to plan this into our high school planning, and I feel like they have largely done so. I think the high school isn't really the issue because there is planned privacy in each shower and changing private floor to ceiling changing areas. I don't think that's the concern. Concern is where we are, middle school and elsewhere. Correct me if I'm wrong, but so Dr. Burkhardt, in consideration of the high school usage and the planning, the privacy, do we have any concerns that an entire classroom would go in and change in the private areas? Or have you done this numbers?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there are private changing areas in each locker room area, but they're not moving to account in the private class the way this is what they have and you say it's So there will be areas for students who elect to change privately, but it would not be enough to accommodate an entire class at one time. Because one of the questions I have is, how do they handle the team rooms for competition? In other words, their basketball game, you have two teams, there are not team locker rooms there at all, it is strictly that area. So there's, and then, my question would be, not for you, thinking out loud, where would they have the meetings? You have one, they can't go to the same area. So I think that's something Nate and I will certainly, I can guarantee I know what you're talking about.
I think the other thing, and respectfully, if I misquote you, please correct me. But the other thing is that in what I heard you say, your hope would be that we would still maintain the policy to say that biological males are using biological rooms and biological females are using biological locker rooms. In this school, they don't have that. So there are 3 open locker rooms. There is not a male, a female open locker room. There are no, as far as the locker rooms go, there are no gendered locker rooms. There's 3 large locker rooms because they have legal assault. As far as their bathroom situation, they do it just like what proposed for the high school. They do have, they use the word gang bathrooms as well. They have gang bathrooms and then individual stalls in the center, much like you see when you go to, the Walmart and have the family bathroom in each of their buildings. And the individual use bathroom is situated between the 2 other bathrooms so that the children are not using facilities all over and having to run the hallways and things like that. Anywhere that they have a gang bathroom, they have an individual use bathroom. But we still maintain the gang bathrooms throughout the building instead of the locker rooms that they've chosen to address to just make open for everyone. Which it was explained to me that this is a European model. I've been to Europe once, and it didn't go well. So I understand that. But it is my understanding that that is generally how things are done there, where it's individual space for private and then you just come and go.
Mr. Boston, go ahead.
Mrs. Weaver, I apologize if I didn't catch this initially.
these changes that were made in that school district in 2019, was that done at the time of the entire school being done, or is it modifications to an existing school?
No, they were doing exactly what we're doing. They were renovating and expanding their high school, and that was when they chose to do it. It was predetermined that they would be renovating and expanding their high school.
What changes, if any, have they made to the elementary or the other level of schools?
So this is a middle school, high school combined, so it's actually kind of neat in that their gym is shared by both the middle and the high school, their auditorium is shared by both the middle and the high school, their library is shared by both the middle and the high school, because again, it is a smaller district. Their middle school only has 100 kids. But we did not speak on the elementary schools, but the comment was made they don't change for gym. So at the elementary school, similar to our elementary school, the need for a locker room is a moot point. So they don't change.
So in considering this further, that the one of the oppositions that I hear a lot of people voice is the cost. And while right now it's not a cost to model our middle school, and hopefully not have to, but if we went to elementary school, it would be a extensive cost, in my opinion. This Virginia policy, I suggest it states, and this is one piece of it, we don't have to reject the whole policy if the board is not in the same like-mindedness that I am, but the model policy suggests we have bathrooms according to biological sex, and transgender children use the neutral gendered bathrooms, which is not far off where we're at with this, but the difference is our current population of transgender children to commit a level of facilities when we have under 10, by my understanding, is from a facility standpoint, it's a big expenditure for a very huge amount of people. So again, I would say we are baking in privacy, which is good for all kids. However, I would still urge that we adopt bathroom use by biological sex, which acknowledges science. And that's where I would suggest we go as far. And then the second piece of the model policy is parent advocacy.
Excuse me, okay. Other comments before we?
Matt mentioned the individual use bathrooms being added, well not added, they're already there, that, and I might have misunderstood, that a letter could go home, so that families can have a conversation together in reference to which restrooms that they would choose for their children to use. Is that ever like that? Like when we update policy in the handbook, I know the middle school, something was sent home saying the reminder of the vaping policy was sent home to all of the students. Is that something that would be sent home to all of the students so that that conversation can be had with every family? Or was your conversation revolving solely around children who identify as transgender, non-binary, or in that?
It was a discussion about adding to the handbook.
But so it'd be an orientation level thing that every student would get from the beginning to take care of it. And even have parents sign off saying, I acknowledge receiving this, so that we know that there is a discussion at home related to it.
Okay. Are we good to move on?
Lastly, one of the questions that was actually raised by one of our commenters was how a transgender child declares and how long that lasts and whether a parent is involved, whether there's outing. Again, I would like to respond and put input to the board that these are minors, the age of consent. Parents have a right to determine what their children are saying and doing at school, and health and mental state is something that a parent absolutely has the right to be involved in That is where this starts. So any discussion that a school has with a child relating to this has to include a parent, in my opinion.
I actually have questions for Dr. Hahn, who I think might clearly answer this, and if you don't, I apologize for calling you on the spot. My oldest turned 14, and when he did so, my husband and I were actually locked down with his medical records. We were told that the doctor, we had to have our son give verbal permission that his parents could access his medical records as per a child privacy law. And then when our daughter just at her birthday, the same thing happened. Now both of our children were willing to say, please allow my parents to have access. But I'm unfamiliar if that is, I'm truly unfamiliar if that is a law or if that is specific to our doctors choose to use or something like that. And like I said, for our family, because we do have these hard conversations, our children were willing to address that. But what is that exactly? And does that cover what we're talking about?
So I'll defer probably to Dr. Dalton to chime in, but certainly there is at the age of 14, children have the right to make decisions, particularly in regard to mental health and their own treatment. So students have the ability to, for example, make decisions about medication, to refuse medication. So students at the age of 14 are given a level of medical rights.
That is what I understand. I do not know the aspect of being locked out of medical records, like the pragmatics of that, so that might be a practice, a doctor practice, but I know that I understand it as Dr. Holmes described.
So in regards to that, is that prescribe the parent from being involved? If a 14-year-old is allowed to make medical decisions, is there still a requirement of parental notification according? I'd like to know what involvement is too.
I think what we're talking about pertains to medical things and not necessarily educational things. So where it encounters or where it intermixes with what we do is when we're supporting students, and sometimes, oftentimes, parents allow us to communicate with physicians and other providers so that we can coordinate care. So oftentimes we encounter those circumstances where parents will disclose to us that the child is making a decision as they have a right to do at age 14 in regard to educational matters and educational decisions, particularly in what I deal with most of the time, which is special education, or when we're talking about mental health supports in the school setting, the age of majority is 21. So parents still retain rights from an educational standpoint. What we're talking about here is medical, and that's what it's in.
Have you been in a situation? Have you been in a situation where a child who's over the age of 14 that can elect for medical reasons, and the parent has said, no, I don't want my child coming out? Have you been in that situation?
I've been in lots of situations where children over the age of 14 have been able to make their own decisions in regard to accessing mental health treatment and medications, yes. Okay. They have the right to refuse medications if the parent says, I think my child should be, and they're having that discussion, that someone over the age of 14 has the right to make that decision.
So they have a right to do that regardless of their parents' wish?
That is my understanding, yes.
And parents have a concern they have to file something with the court.
Yeah, the student does have the right. I mean, and that goes for things beyond medication as well. It's mental health treatment in general. So a student has to consent and agree to access those services, and if a student does not, then I think really in lieu of a serious safety issue where we would have to petition that the student is not able to maintain their safety, then that's when somebody else would step in and make decisions. We have engaged in that process at different times if we have a student, but that's a very extreme case where we would petition to have somebody make a medical recommendation without the student's consent. That's a very high level of significant situation. In most cases, the student has that right at age 14.
Thank you. I apologize for being in the
Yes, I would like to make on the record
request that we get for law certificates that
Minor consent act was signed into law, or was revised under House Bill 672, which became Act 65 of 2020.
so that's a PA law?
Correct.
Yes. PA, House Bill.
Well, House Bill 672, but once signed in and passed, it became Act 65 of 2020.
Any clarification, please refer to that first one.
Okay. Okay, moving on, visitors. Tyler Bunting.
I thank you all for letting me come and speak tonight. And I definitely agree with Mr. Matt that we very much need to revise, I believe you said it was policy 309. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it kind of, I felt really odd that me as a student, former student, somehow didn't have the right to speak here, despite the fact, I have some history in this place. And I can understand policy, but I can also understand when policy is incorrect. Especially when I don't understand how my location has any weight over, my experience with Southwest. And if there's anyone in this room who doesn't think that I am, allowed to stand up here and speak, I can tell you right now to take a step out of this building and look across the street at the high school. Because there is a motto that our school lives by, and it's once a Mustang, always a Mustang. So I don't know how me living in New York means anything. I can certainly tell you that if it's an issue with taxes, I pay for taxes at York Suburban, which I have no connections to. And I still pay those taxes, whether I like it or not, because of the fact that I know those taxes are going to help them. There may be some taxes I don't like, but there's not much I can do about that. I mean, yeah, I can put my voice in, and I may. But I also want to help my own high school out. And that's why I also wanted to donate this art piece that I had made, which I call Bleeding Red, Black, and White. Because we need to remember that we're all in this together. Because we are all Mustangs, regardless of location. I had spoken to some former classmates of mine that I graduated with. And when I told them about how you guys had originally decided to deny me to speak, they turned their heads in confusion. Because they're confused that, wait, we're students of Southwest. Why shouldn't we have a right to, say of how our future of our place goes? And also with Mr. Matt, I do understand your concern when it comes to the majority of students, like you're saying about there being too low of a number to really make these accommodations. But here's the thing. Would you say that about if you had only one student with a wheelchair? Would you then decide not to put in any ramps in the school simply because it's only one student in that wheelchair? I can certainly tell you that there really is not very much difference between a student with a wheelchair and a student with transgenderism because of the fact that a disability is a disability. I can certainly tell you that gender dysphoria and the people that I've spoken with who do suffer from it and do have it, I can tell you that under federal law it is protected by disability rights. And those accommodations would account. And yes, I can tell you those accommodations are definitely reasonable. As someone who has mental illness, mental disability, and mental disorder, that if you don't ever feel safe, you can't learn well. I can certainly tell you that from experience, because I never felt safe when I was in this school. And it caused my learning to suffer. You may think that simply the bathrooms are a small, little, minuscule thing. Maybe to you. But to those students who have to bear that weight of, possibly thinking that someone's going to fear that they're going to rape them, when I can certainly tell you all they want to do is use the bathroom and get out. It's honestly kind of just heartbreaking to see all this random fear over things that aren't really actually there. I can certainly tell you from experience. So I really do hope that the board really thinks this over. Because I want these students to be able to learn in peace. I desperately want these students to be able to be the best that they can be. Because this is supposed to be a symbol of unity.
And that's what we are. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Matt Smith.
Come to church right. Sorry, I took a little bit of chiropractor is the only reason I'm walking today. But what Mandy Weaver said earlier was very important. And I like to look at faces, I like to look at wording and things. So before that, when we hear words like all inclusive and things like that, those are politicized words. And a lot of what we hear is not using politicized words, because when we don't cause division. And then we can work together, right? So the way Director Weaver described that particular locker room, how it worked, notice her choice of words, protecting all students. That's what she said. She didn't say any politicized words at all. And that's what we need to look at, protecting all students. Boy and girl, right? That's what that mindset. Science. And there's single bathrooms right there. So my question would be, in light of not using politically charged words, what other districts have been consulted? So while I couldn't do much yesterday and the day before, I talked to friends of ours that are on the board of Southern and West Shore and Spring Road and all of those, and asked how they do these things. They said it's very simple. We don't have this conversation ongoing. Boys, girls, single bathrooms. That's it. 3 meetings in a row. One was 3.5 hours long, one was 3 hours long. Who knows how long this one's going to be? Stop complicating. It's very simple. We want to protect all children, right? That's the way Manny Weaver put it. That is exactly correct. No politically charged words. Protect all children. And do it for the least amount of cost, which would be what it in renovations, right? It's very simple. So, and I heard that Southern did this a couple years ago too. I don't know when exactly they did that, put that policy in. It was simple. But what I do understand is 4 out of the last 5 years, they've not had a tax increase. They've operated on a net surplus of $17 million. That's pretty amazing. So if you guys aren't talking to other districts, I'd ask why not. That's all I have. Thanks.
Stephen Clark.
Stephen Clark, Manheim Township. While we are on different sides of the ballpark here with the bathroom and renovations and everything, let's talk about something that we can all agree on, and that's taxes. This is going to cost, the renovation is going to cost every single one of us in this district. Our taxes going to go up. The county's already going up, and so is the school board taxes going up, and you guys are looking at $72 million for a renovation possibly here. It's going to hike up, and then you're going to have to look at is pods or cubicles for our students. Why it's being renovated? That's going to cost you a lot more money than you're going to do sort of renovation. While I like Mrs. Weaver's idea, it's going to cost all of us our own taxes. And may I remind you of what happened in history in 1775 when the British taxed the tea in Boston? It caused a revolution, and nobody liked that, and it caused a stamp act. And it may not cause a revolution here. It's going to cause angry parents, grandparents, and students that's going to grow up in this district, and townspeople. It's going to look pretty ugly if we're doing that. So if there's a neutral in any of this, there's got to be. And while I'm at it, education in America is going down. UK is #1 in education right now. Can you believe that? Somebody across the pond is a lot smarter than people here now. Reminds me of a quote from FDR from Pearl Harbor. While the Japanese are making bombs, we're making refrigerators. Because that in America has been exceptional from the beginning it was created. We had Henry Ford, we had the Vanderbilts, J.P. Morgan, And now I have managers at my work that don't even know how to read a damn analog clock because everything went digital. They can't even read a Roman numeral analog clock. And I even students that just graduated from 2020, 21. Why? Because we went from books to computers, and they're stuck in their computer and their phones. We need to find a way to use that 72 million, go back to our books, maybe we'll cut down on the taxes as well. Thank you.
Those are all that I have as far as being signed into a best report. Anybody else in the audience wish to make a comment? Yes, ma'am. Come forward to the mic.
Hello, I am Katie Bauer, Penn Township, and I just wanted to take a moment and thank you for healthy discussion. It doesn't happen very often, and although I think this topic has gone on far too long, I did want to say that I am in agreement with one thing that Mr. Bunty said about reasonable accommodation. I also would like to very specifically thank Mandy Weaver and Matt Gilazella for always coming prepared to speak and to ask questions, because questions are learning, and I appreciate a better understanding of exactly what the intent is. Thank you.
And I saw another hand. Yes, sir.
Hello, Madam Mayor, Manheim Township. Was not planning to speak tonight, but I've been taking a few notes and want to bring a couple of things to attention. I don't know if people thought about. This is the third meeting of this discussion. Other school districts are not having this discussion, like was mentioned. We have an election coming up very shortly. Why does this need to go through before the new school season? If we do this, what's going next? Staff factors. We have a lot of different buildings here. I'm a bus driver. What if I decide that I'm going to be transgender and I need to be accommodated? I think we're going down a slippery slope. It is going to cause taxes. I have a kid in elementary and middle school, and they've already heard about this, not directly from me. It's rumor mill, and let me tell you, my little girl already doesn't feel safe. As far as parental consent, 14 years, that's the law in Pennsylvania. However, there's also a Supreme Court decision, I forget what it was, but you mentioned it. That has not been tried through the Supreme Court yet. Is that 14-year parental consent going to be pulled up as constitutional? So should we truly rely on that? Taxes. I'm not 100% sure how taxes, if you guys can do anything about this, and it's a little bit different topic. Elderly people that live in a school district that are losing their houses because of property taxes from the school district. Is there anything the board has the ability to do about it? I just want to put that thought out there. I personally know of someone that's going to be losing their house shortly. She's widowed, and she can no longer afford taxes. The other point I wanted to make, people speaking from outside school district, I don't believe that they should. I'm not originally from the school district. I cannot go speak in the school district I graduated from. I speak here because I pay taxes here. Just like if I work for a company, I can speak there. When I leave that company, I have no right to do that. Letting people come in from outside, it's just outside influence and noise that I don't think we need. And yeah, that's basically all I got. Thanks for your time.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hi, Justin Levy. So I was happy to hear that the policy that was put out was the wrong one, because I was reading it and I was very concerned that there wasn't a lot of changes. In the updates that you provided, though, I couldn't help but notice that obviously parental rights wasn't included there at all. And I understand that you wanted to defer that, but my opinion stands firm that parental rights have to be included in the policy and not a regulation. It must be documented because it's the most important. Having said that, I also would like to thank some of the discussion, some of the other ideas. The Lancaster school idea I have to put some more thought into, but it seems like it could possibly be something that might work for us. That being said, I'm not as privy to you as you are to some of this information, and I have not looked into it. But as far as this remodel that's coming up, and we're going to break ground, I think it's absolutely ludicrous that when things cost the most they've ever costed in this country's history, we're doing a $70 million remodel. And experts say that it's only going to get worse over the next 6 months or a year. I would say that the best thing would be to halt the remodel, reevaluate the bathroom situation until we make a decision, and let's consider a remodel when things aren't so expensive. A lot of talk about taxes here. Again, I don't know this for sure, but my understanding is that it was a $40 million remodel. Now it's a $70 million remodel. Until you're done with it, it'll be a $100 million remodel with the cost going up the way they are. Can we live with it for another 2 years? I think that would be, I've talked to some teachers, they say that we definitely can. So that would just be my opinion. Thank you.
Members of the board, I have not intended to speak tonight, but I'm sorry. My name is Kirby. I live in Manheim Township. I did graduate from this school, but I'm also a taxpayer here. I would advise the board and members of the district, the parents and the taxpayers, two things. First, anytime the government tells you that they're going to do something and it's not going to cost any money, we all know that's not true. Wars don't pay for themselves, tax cuts don't pay for themselves, investments in green energy don't pay for themselves. It never does. It costs twice as much, takes twice as long, delivers half the capability of its products. So I would advise us all to be concerned anytime any level of government tells you they're going to do something for you and it's not going to cost any additional money. And the other point that I would offer to the board, this district belongs to the people who pay taxes here and the people whose children go to school here. I don't think this school district needs any outsiders to advise us or make recommendations on what we should be doing. We should be running our district as we see fit. And the parents and the taxpayers of other districts should deal with their issues on their side. I do think it's a great suggestion that the members of the board may want to consult with other school district boards, but I don't think you need input from people outside of the district. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I think I saw one more meeting back there.
My name is Julie Handy. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. I was just going to observe, but there was a few questions that throughout the meeting came up. Until the renovations are done, I'm not really sure when they would be planning to be done or completion date. My issue is what would happen until then, because my son would still need an accommodation to not have a biological female permitted in his locker room. In the boys' locker room. So, what would be done in the meantime for those kids? Because the renovations, I'm assuming, would take next year, 2 years? How long is the renovation? Next year. Then also, parent notification, I think that is important. I know the 14-year-old rule for medical purposes, I would be interested. Who pays for that then? I mean, on the medical standpoint, do you know that, would the parents' insurance still pay for that? Or would the kids be responsible for it? I mean, if a parent is against it and not okay with it, then would their insurance pay for it, or would they be financially responsible for it? I mean, because if they're not, that could save me a lot of money, because I'm pretty confident my children's, what they would say, okay, fine, if you can get free medical care because you can make your own decisions at 14 and you're not financially liable, then why not? I mean, is that, can you answer, or do you know that answer, or no? You can't? No. Okay.
It's likely insurance, but I can look into it.
Okay, I was just curious, I just didn't know, would my insurance then still be responsible, even though I would be saying I'm not okay with this? I don't know, yeah. Okay. Alright, just curious about that. I think we do need to be notified, though, the parent. I would not be okay with my child utilizing bathrooms. I feel like at that point, if the child is wanting to choose that, then it's a conversation that should probably have already happened or will be happening, because it's not like in secret. They're in the school. But that's just my thoughts. I am curious though about, in the meantime, do I have to put a permanent accommodation in place for my child at that time? I would like some clarification on that, or maybe you could discuss, until renovations are done, what should the pathway be for the parents that are not okay with their child using the restroom with the opposite gender?
Yes, ma'am.
Christiane Martin from Penn Township, also school board candidate. I wasn't planning on speaking either. However, I'm going to try to clarify this 14-year-old medical and mental health problem that we seem to be talking about. So I work in mental health. So from what I understand, because I work in mental health and I work with the facilities and providers, my own children and my own life, parents or children 14 do not get to make their own medical decisions. They get to make their own mental health decisions. So, for instance, said 15-year-old, let's say, said 14-year-old, mom wants her to go get therapy. Said 14-year-old does not want to get therapy. Said 14-year-old does not have to. However, if said 14-year-old goes to the pediatrician and the pediatrician is talking medical whatever, mom absolutely, or dad has say-so. Child does not. Maybe amongst them together, but that is not a child gets to say what yes or no to a medical treatment. Mental health, yes. Medical, no. I've had that discussion numerous times with doctors and mental health, and that is, from what my knowledge and my experience has been what I know. As far as school, in the school, that I don't know, but I can say outside, that is what I'm familiar with. So, because I keep hearing medical, and I'm like, no, because I take my kids all the time, and they do not let them, and they're over 14, and they do not let them decide anything. But mental health, yes, they absolutely, which I think is ludicrous myself in Pennsylvania, 14-year-olds can make their own mental health decisions. I think that's absolutely insanity. However, that is the case. So I'm not sure where the line is drawn with school in regards to that. But that being said, I also agree that parental consent is extremely important. They can't just they can't legally sign themselves out of school whenever they want. There's a certain age that they can do that. It's not like a 14-year-old can just say, peace out, I'm just going to leave. There would be consequences to that, and we could, but that isn't legal. So I feel like us as parents, under the age of at least 18, obviously, since that's when they're in school, most of them, have a right and should know what is going on here. The school is an education building. It's not a medical building. It's really not a mental health building. It's an education building. And that's what we're doing, is we're trying to educate our children. We're not here to give them therapy. We're not here to give them medical guidance, mental health guidance, although we want to ensure their safety. We want to ensure everything that's going on that is well and good and safe and all. This is not what they're here for. They're here for their education, traditional education. So I would really hope that you would implore having parental consent in regards to what we're talking about. And that's it. Thank you.
Board members, any other comments, questions? Mandy?
Just very quickly, I feel several of you mentioned taxes this evening, but something really struck home, and it's the gentleman who had mentioned his possibly raising tax. And so I was wondering if Mr. Homer wouldn't mind in front if we could just give, in front of the expert, 30-second overview of how property taxes work in this country, and what they're doing. But they're not set by the district, but I if you have a different property tax set by the state.
So, I'm sure what you're talking about.
I'm sorry to say that we didn't catch most of what you were saying over here, what your question was.
I'm sorry. I was simply saying that here this evening several community members brought up issues about taxes, but I was really, I felt compelled to address the concerns that the gentleman had regarding his friend. Many in this community are on fixed incomes, and I just thought while we had Mr. Mummer here, the expert with taxes, if he could explain to us just very, very brief how they work, how they're structured in taxes, and it's more at a state level, correct? I mean, as far as those on fixed income and how we generate.
No. See, what happens with taxes is school districts are local taxing bodies, the counties are local taxing bodies, the townships are local taxing bodies for real estate tax. There is no state real estate tax. Now, the state does have tax programs. They have the property tax and rent and rebate program, which can give senior citizens tax rebates, money to help offset their property taxes. But there's no state property tax. It's all local property taxes. As far as losing houses, the one thing we do track is how many folks in the school district have had taxes sold, have had houses sold because of tax sales. And in our school district, there were no houses sold last year because of property tax or to tax distinct states. So you see a lot of sheriff sales. Sheriff sales are because they can't pay the mortgage, it's not because of property taxes. The taxes are tax subsidies. So we have not had any properties last year. I don't know how many were previous years, but I know last year we had that.
Can I ask one question too while we're sort of on the subject? I know there was a comment about another school district living off of a slush fund. Could you explain the fund balance principle throughout the state of Pennsylvania, Mr. Muller?
So the state of Pennsylvania has requirements with regard to fund balances. You limited to having a fund balance of 8% with a school district of our size. you can go up to 12% for a much smaller school district. Our policy is to try to have our fund balance at that 8% level at all times, which in our district is somewhere around $6.5–7 million. If we have too much money in fund balance, we actually cannot increase taxes to the level that's allowed by the state. So this year and last year, we did not go up as high as we could have with the index because our fund balance is already at the 8% level. So I know that the fund balance was a big issue recently. There are some school districts in the state of Pennsylvania who got hammered with the Auditor General's office, I guess it was, because they carried high fund balances and were still seeking exceptions to the index, the actual index. I don't know if there are any allowed with that, so I don't think there was any of that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, I think that.
I just wanted to call attention to his grandmother and help the child to speak. She wanted to speak, I believe. Is that correct, ma'am, or did you do it?
Thank you. I just want to say I appreciate all the time, and I'm very concerned, and I think the parents really need to be involved. I can't imagine being a parent in today's world and not knowing what's going on. I know when I went to school, you couldn't even take an aspirin to school. God forbid you got called with an aspirin in school. They were calling your mom right away. When I went to school, we got padded also. And if I knew the teachers or the principal was going to call my mom or dad, it prevented me from doing certain things because I knew that I had to address that when I got home. And if kids can't address their parents, I don't know how they can handle, like, maybe rejection from other people as well. Because you do have to face your family. Your family is forever. You can't choose your family. It's been chosen for you, or chosen for you by God. And we do need to remember God in all this. Most people don't fear God. That's where we are today in the whole world. People have forgotten about God. And I know someone addressed about the drug issue and the bullying. I'll soon be celebrating my 50th class reunion. There was drugs and bullying going on way back then. I hope we can fix it. I pray that we can, because it's amazing what happened when I went to school, and I don't think much has changed. It's actually gotten worse. So hopefully we can get to the bottom of some of these things before things happen that we don't want to see happen, not only just in our school district, but everywhere. So I can just say there is people that suffer, but let's not forget, Jesus suffered the most. He's the one who suffered the most in the world. He was spit on, his beard was pulled out, he was just hung on a cross to save us all. Let's not forget about him. And that's where all our answers are. Trust me on that. We have to remember God in all this. In your decisions, let's not forget him. There's a male and a female. Let's keep bathrooms separate and then go with something to accommodate everyone. And I like we need to protect all students and all faculty. You all need to be protected too, because people just want to come after you and sue you and do all this. We don't need all these headaches, and we don't need our taxes being raised and spent on all the litigation and everything. So I like the policy. It's a very good beginning, but yeah, there's so many issues. And like the one person said, if we don't protect ourselves, we're going to be going down a slippery slope, and what's going to come up next? So let's just try to keep everyone, all students, and keep them students. They are here for an education, math, reading, and writing. And unfortunately, a lot of our children that are graduating, they don't even have those 3 skills. There's something wrong, because I've lived in the school district for 30 years. My taxes have gone up every year. We should have some of the smartest school students in the world based on my school taxes. So anyway, I appreciate all your time. You're doing a great job. But times are getting tough. But go to God when you don't know the answers, because He knows everything. Thank you.
The end of our agenda. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all people for attending our meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Tom, second by Matt. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Thank you for your patience. 9:14.